It is a little after 5:30. I will call to order this special meeting of the Waco ISD Board of Trustees. We do have a quorum present. We'll move on to item 3, which is the public hearing under Texas Education Code, section 39.306 on the TAPR report. Dr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're appreciative of everyone coming out to our public hearing. This is an annual activity per Texas Education Code law that we're to present the findings of our Texas Academic Performance Report Card, TAPR report. It was formerly called the AEIS report, and it has just a host of information I believe that the public can review and learn more about the health of our district. We do have copies of the actual TAPR report available here tonight for the public to review. I've asked our Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Dr. Scott McClanahan, to give an overview of this document and bring to attention several of the findings of this report and allow us to hear from the public as well as from the Board of Trustees during this annual hearing. It is a concise, condensed version of a longer report, and we do have over 50 copies, which I think will be plenty for this audience. We have 50 copies of the report. You know, what I think we should do, Mr. Carrera, is I would like for our representative from Baylor, representatives of the media, to receive a copy of the TAPR report just to help assist their learning of this public school document. So we have Ashley Thornton here to give her a copy. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. McClanahan to take us through our presentation. Mr. President, you want to acknowledge, well, I guess we haven't taken roll yet. So good evening, Trustee Dupuy. Good to see you. Dr. McClanahan?
Go ahead.
Good evening. So I've put together, as Dr. Nelson said, a condensed version of the one report which we posted on the district website for anyone to access. And the paper copies that are being distributed also have a glossary in the back that will acquaint anyone in the public with what each of the categories means and how they were calculated. So the first place I thought that we should look at is at our STAR results. The approaches grade level is the important indicator for those students that are considered passing.
For all grades, all subjects at the approaches grade level and above, this year we were at 61%, as opposed to the state at 73 and the region at the state at 75 and the region at 73. That was actually a gain of 3% for the district. In reading, we were at 56% of the students that met approaches grade level, which remained steady with our 2016 level. The state and region both decreased by a percentage point on that indicator. For approaches grade level for mathematics, we scored at 66%, which was an increase of 7% over our 2016 level, while the region and state showed only 3% gains. In the category of writing, we lost a percentage point to come in at 51%, while the region dropped 3% and the state dropped 2%, and they're sitting at 67 and 63 respectively. In science, while the region and state remained stable with percent of students meeting the approaches grade level, we showed a 2% increase to 65%. However, while the state remained steady in social studies performance and the region decreased by 1%, Waco ISD students meeting the approaches grade level standard rose 4% to 66. Attendance, and remember we are always one school year behind from the one that we just finished, and so all of the TAPR data is from the 2015-16 graduating class and that school year. Our attendance for the 2015-16 school year came in at 93.9%, which was unchanged from the previous year, while the state and region showed negligible gains of 1/10%.
Having said that, I do want to take this opportunity not to get Dr.
No.
McClanahan off his flow, but you know what the attendance was today? 86%. So our staff is attributing it to the flu crisis, being cold, where our walkers, for the record, are having the highest attendance. They walk to school. They used to walking in the heat in the winter. It doesn't really matter. It's the kids that ride buses that do not want to sit out in 19-degree weather waiting for the buses. So I didn't mean to interrupt, Dr. McClanahan.
No, that's good.
It's just a problem. Like, this is a year ago, and this data is not looking better as we're working on. So we'll talk about that in another agenda item. Dr. McClanahan?
The next thing I thought would be important to look at was the annual dropout rate. The state actually measures it at both grades 7 and 8, and then at 9 through 12. At 7 and 8, our annual dropout rate actually decreased by 1/10% to 0.5%. For grades 9 through 12, we actually grew at about 0.6% and ended up at 4.2% for the 2015-16 school year. In terms of college readiness for our graduates, in English language arts, our percent of graduates grew 2.2% between 2015 and 16 to 34.2% of graduates that had met that college ready standard. And in math, we grew 3.7% to 20.7% in that same period. So if we look at our college-ready graduates that met in both subjects, we grew 0.5% to 13.5% for the class of 2016. Additionally, the number of graduates deemed college and career ready for that same group grew 14.6% to 85.6% of the class of 2016. Our average SAT score for all subjects actually grew by 5 points to 1237 over the class of 2015. Our average ACT score dropped a point over the class of 2015, but our percent of the class of 2016 that tested on either one of those instruments actually grew by almost 5%. For our special program enrollment, you can see that our bilingual ESL and career and technical education enrollment is pretty online with the state averages. We find that we are slightly over-identified in gifted and talented and slightly under in special education. And we have seen since these numbers, we're already starting to see some changes in those. One of the other things that by Texas statute must be reported in this annual report are violent and criminal incidents. And so we found that those remained constant from 2014-15 to 2015-16. We had 84 expellable offenses, 167 mandatory offenses, and 632 discretionary offenses. And I think altogether that was about 5 different from the previous year. One of the other things by education code that we have to report is our students' performance in post-secondary education. And so this graphic actually shows our graduates of the class of 2015 and how they performed in post-secondary education. These are university high graduates. And we report that where they went to school and what their grade point average was at the end of that first year. And we had 53% of the graduates at University High that were shown to have enrolled in post-secondary education. We found for Waco High, we had 51% of our students that had enrolled, and their data is there. And one of the last things that we wanted to show was our performance distinctions. We had 5 Waco ISD campuses that earned distinctions during the 16-17 school year. Tennyson had 7 distinctions. University High had 2 distinctions. Cedar Ridge Elementary, Hillcrest Professional Development School, and Kendrick Elementary each had 1 distinction. And as I said, this full report will end up being posted on the district website.
So
Dr.
in
Nelson?
closing, we just wanted to really communicate an overview of a very detailed and meticulous report. We have provided the full report for both the public and the media, and we'd encourage you to really spend some time looking at that data, particularly as we compare from year to year. So it is our report card with the Texas Education Agency. We're proud that the district has met standards. We have 5 campuses that were unable to meet state standards, and that has been the focus of our interventions and planning for the year to make sure that we have a school system that exceeds all state and federal expectations. At this time, Mr. President, before I relinquish the floor, I would like to thank Dr. McClanahan and his team, along with all of our staff who helped put this together. You know, this report is not just about reading and writing and math. This report looks at, you know, how much crime we've had on our campuses, our attendance rates, our dropout rates, how many fights, and I mean, you can really learn a lot. You can learn about our staff and how many of our staff have master's degrees and doctoral degrees, and we just want to be very transparent about the need to improve our system and continuously have a model of continuous improvement. So with that, Mr. President, we'll allow for comments from the trustees and or the public.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Dr. McClanahan, before opening it up to the board, this is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would want to comment on the performance report or academic performance report? Hearing none, are there any members of the board that have any questions or comments on the report? Yeah, Ms. Sykes.
Dr. McClanahan, from the summary earlier in your presentation regarding the graphs representing approaches grade level for the different subject matter areas, it would appear that with regards to state and region compared to district, some gaps are being closed in those subject areas.
True.
Many of them, most of them. Can you identify for me what areas you are, I will say, expected either different or better results on, thereby needing some further effort in that area or areas which you feel we're making the most significant progress?
Well, I would have to say that our area that's making the most significant progress is math, and that's thanks to Ms. Sarah Scott, our district math coordinator, who is sitting over here to my right. She and her team have done a really spectacular job at bringing in a new set of materials, training the teachers to use them well, and we have definitely seen the results of that on our benchmark assessments as well as the state assessments. The place that we are really focusing our efforts on right now is writing, because we know that that is an area that we start off struggling in 4th grade and it continues all the way through our English 2 end of course exam. And so we have done a really coordinated effort this year with developing our benchmark assessments, bringing teachers together and having them actually calibrate and grade as a professional development activity. And I know at the elementary level that they have done a lot of training on the basics of writing, actually rolling them out by genre so that we start to build those students as writers all the way up into the high school.
I would add to Dr. McClanahan's response, Trustee Sykes, if I may, that if you understand how the accountability system works, for the record, it's constantly changing. And this time next spring, the state of Texas, my humble opinion, is rolling out a new system where we won't even be talking about approaches and meets. I think we actually will, but the public, the media, is going to be reporting an A through F system. And this will be the first time they call the Waco ISD either gets an A, B, C, D, or an F. And we're having to learn how that's going to be measured, what that criteria is going to look like. The following year, each campus will get a letter grade. And so I wanted to just answer your question as, in addition to Dr. McClanahan's comments, every subject we have needs to improve.
Everyone.
because they're constant. Now, I would end by saying, in addition to the outstanding work done in our math department, the work on 4th grade, 7th grade, exit level writing, as Dr. McClanahan poignantly explained, the other issue that we feel like we can really focus on is literacy. And if we can just get more kids reading on grade level, we think it'll manifest itself in improved math scores, improved writing scores. It'll improve our social studies. It'll improve our science, because all of those core areas are assessed through exams that are what we call back in the day word problems. It's a paragraph. So it doesn't matter what subject we're talking about, you have to be able to read on grade level. And if you know our data, we have too many students that are not reading on grade level.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Sykes.
Dr. McClanahan. So then regarding the changing landscape, and we know it's changing rapidly, and with regard specifically to writing and closing the gaps and improving and continuous improvement, how, with the benchmarks and everything that you're monitoring and measuring, are we able to identify how to continue the track that we're on and make increased or greater improvements in relation to this changing landscape, I guess?
When we report the benchmark data back to the schools, we actually report it by TEAC. So we're actually able to figure out exactly which part is holding the students back. If it's a usage skill, they don't understand punctuation. If it's that they're not putting enough ideas and elaboration into their essays, we're able to report that back. Same thing for the reading skills and math skills. And because we're working with Lead Forward and they're able to tell us over the course of the STAR administrations which of those TEACs have been tested most often, we're able to really invest our time in places that we know it's going to be most valuable for our students. And we hadn't really rolled that out fully to our administrators until this fall, and we brought the Lead Forward trainers in, and now they understand how to go on and access that information and look at, you know, which of those standards has really been tested and which they need to really make sure their teachers are focusing on. And I think that that's going to bring us some additional gains, just because people are being more aware of what they need to know.
So it's interesting to note in several subject areas, there was progress at the district level and lesser progress, which closed the gaps for state and region.
Right.
And it's my hope that with the programs you've got initiated and the, I guess the due diligence, that you would say, going into these programs going forward, we can keep this momentum going and
right.
keep the gaps narrowing, if you will.
And well, we've really taken on more of a kind of analysis role, looking at everything that we're doing and evaluating, is this successful? You know, we need to find a different way to do that. And rather than just throw out everything, we're really trying to analyze and find the parts of what we're doing that are most successful and capitalize on those. And because of that, we're seeing some good results on the campuses. We're getting positive feedback from the teachers, and I think that in itself is going to help the scores to continue to, you know, close the gap toward the state.
You know, the other issue that we're really focusing on, Trustee Sykes, is expanding the instructional capacity of our leaders. You know, we look at our database right now, we have a software system that documents, we've completed 8,500 classroom walkthroughs this year. So the natural question that would come is, how has that been meaningful? And we'll fully admit that some of those walkthroughs are more effective than other walkthroughs. But what we want to get to the point is that we're doing 8,500 walkthroughs and all of them are meaningful. The teacher found them valuable. The administrator has calibrated what they're looking for. And so that's really the analysis that Dr. McClanahan is speaking to, because we do have an abundance of leadership intent. But intent is not what's going to, you know, we're not going to be able to hope and wish our way to improved instruction. We're really going to have to go kid by kid and differentiate our instruction. What Dr. McClanahan needs in his 5th grade classroom is different than what I need. And we really got to just go kid by kid to really make our walkthroughs more effective, because we're doing thousands of them. And we want to make sure that that's a very important part of our leadership plan.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments from the board? Any other questions, or are there any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, the hearing on the Texas Academic Performance Report is hereby adjourned, and we will convene the board meeting in about 5 minutes.